So welcome everyone. My name is Alison, co-founder and director of HML, and I'm joined today by my colleague Catherine Murphy and guest Shefali Sangvi from HKS Architects. We've also got some recordings from our last open house of Alison Smith and Sheridan Johnson from HKS Architects, who spoke about their experience of the courses and their changes to practice at HKS. So a little bit of a background about Shefali. She has over 15 years of experience of affordable housing experience in a variety of typologies, including new construction, renovation, senior housing, and supportive housing. She's dedicated to designing buildings that are socially, environmentally, and financially sustainable, and has become an expert on urban passive house projects. She believes that it's the architect's responsibility to respect the power that we hold on the built environment by designing spaces that are welcoming to all members of society. She's also currently an associate and sustainable practice group co-chair at HKS Architects, and has previously worked at firms specializing in affordable housing in New York City. And also introduce Alison and Sheridan. So they both spoke last time we had the open house, and we have recordings of them today. Alison Smith is a sustainable design leader at HKS. Alison promotes responsible material selection and education firm-wide, and has managed over 30 sustainability projects totaling over $3 billion in construction, including 2 LEED version 4 platinum projects. She supports materials transparency initiatives, including the Health Product Declaration Collaborative Technical Committee, the USGBC Materials and Resources Technical Advisory Group, and the Mindful Materials Collaborative. Sheridan Johnson is a junior interior designer at HKS, passionate about material health. She's the founding member of our college's IIDA chapter in 2018. And she has enjoyed formally joining the industry as a designer and has since been selected to join the IIDA Emerging Leaders class of 2020. We also, as a result of that, a fabulous conversation just before the holidays with Alison and Sheridan, have started a really amazing collaboration with HKS on one of their pro bono projects in Richmond, Virginia, the Benefield project. So look out for some developments in that project from us in the new year here. We're excited to be working with them. So a little bit about the Healthy Materials Lab sponsoring this event today. We're dedicated to placing human health and ecologies at the center of every design decision to create healthier places for all people. We're a collaboration of 4 organizations: Parsons Healthy Materials Lab, the Healthy Building Network, Green Science Policy Institute, and the Health Product Declaration Collaborative. And we mentioned that just earlier with Alison's work with HKS and that body. And we're funded by a grant from the JPB Foundation. And you'll see that we have a very robust presence, particularly on our website, but also in social media. So follow us and stay up to date with all of the great projects that we're working on. So I think Catherine Murphy is going to give you a little bit of a background about the courses that we offer. Catherine's a senior researcher in the lab, a graduate of the MFA Interior Design program at Parsons, currently lecturing at Columbia University and working with colleagues from the NSSR program at the New School. Hi, Catherine.
Thank you, Alison. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to Shefali. Thanks very much for joining us today. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Era. So we're all starting off on a great foot. So I just want to give a little background to the 2 programs that we offer. One, the Healthy Materials and Sustainable Building program. It's our most comprehensive offering. It has 4 courses with 23.5 hours of content. It offers 18 AIA health, safety, and wellness CEUs and 23.5 IDCEC health, safety, and wellness CEUs. We've also just been approved for GBCI credits for the first section. So those are 4.5 CEUs. In the program, we cover the basics of materials and human health, what the issue is, how it impacts human health, the chemistry of building products. This is a fundamental part of the program, and it's a section that many of the graduates really appreciate. It explains why particular outcomes and health impacts are produced. In the second half of the program, so what we call courses 3 and 4, we guide architects and designers through industry resources and certifications and help students to build a framework for designing and specifying with healthier products. And in the final section, we speak to architects and designers who share their lessons learned from practices. And those who've been working with these goals in mind for years.
In my opinion, I think the way...
We can just pause that for a second. Great, thank you, Alison. The other program, which is the Healthy and Sustainable Affordable Housing, is geared at those working specifically in affordable housing. So it's shortened at, or shorter at 7.5 hours, and it offers 6 AIA or 7.5 IDC CEUs. The programs are delivered on the New Schools Online Learning Program, Canvas, and all of the content is delivered by experts. So accuracy is vitally important to us. So we reached out to experts across all industries and professions to share their knowledge and deliver this content. Making healthier buildings and spaces for all people is central to our mission at Parsons Healthy Materials Lab, and we're particularly focused on the affordable housing market. And we're really glad to have Shefali here today, who speak a little bit about her work there and how our program has helped that. But Alison, if you could share the next slide and a short video from Oganaya. She's the Senior Program Officer. This is Oganaya Dotson Newman, the Senior Program Officer in the Environment Program at the JPB Foundation. And she explains this work in a clear way.
Yeah, and Oganaya is our program manager for the grants, so we interact with Oganaya a lot, and she has a lot of experience in New York City, particularly with organizations like We Act, and also working with the Department of Health and NYCHA in the past.
In my opinion, I think the way that we create change for communities is to like switch one of the words even in that sentence, is how do we create change together or with communities? And so I really do think that since we're also trying to navigate much of what we're talking about in terms of like power inequity, income inequity, race and class inequity, that working to create processes and to be very intentional about how we're thinking about moving forward and not just kind of like doing things for people, but doing things with people, can really create like really like beautiful, beautiful things. I think that oftentimes too, because it's a long kind of like tedious process, not everyone necessarily has the appetite for it. But oftentimes too, when you do this, you're creating opportunities for people to talk kind of like across their jargon, to talk across some of their lines. I think it also kind of like creates an opportunity to think about, you know, the protection of those that are most vulnerable. And there's always been, like, I used to play soccer for a long time, and my coach used to always say, like, we are only as strong as our weakest link. And so I think that kind of like team exercise should be applied to many things that we do. Those people that are most vulnerable in our society, if we work with them to find ways, I mean, within reason, to be able to like incorporate their ideas, their input, and to value, I think, at the very basic level, their humanity, we can figure out ways to work together to actually create like a collective like unit, building, community that kind of like serves all of us in a way that I think can be very helpful.
Great.
In my opinion, I think the way that we
just love you so much.
And then we have a few words here from guest speakers in the fourth course, which is all to do with executing a healthier project.
One of the biggest lessons that I see coming out of the Living Building Challenge is how do we completely change how we design buildings?
It is very important to ensure that every project team member is fully aware of the why behind prioritization of material health on these large projects.
We have to sort of shift the mentality from wanting a plaque to actually wanting a healthier environment for people.
Sustainability is not just a question about energy use. In addressing that, you bring up all of these much more human-oriented issues such as daylight and materials.
And we have one other quick video. Great. So that should give you all a kind of a quick snapshot of what we offer in this 4-course program. And we'll be happy to take any questions you have at the end. If you want to add them in the Q&A box, we'll answer those right at the end. Before that, though, we're going to show an excerpt from the last open house we offered, where we had, as Alison had mentioned earlier, we had Alison Smith and Sheridan Johnston from HKS Architects. So here, Alison speaks about why HKS enrolled and how it has really helped their work.
So HKS is a large company, and we have a professional development team as well as staff that produce a lot of internal education content. And this includes around sustainability and healthier materials, which is what my focus is in. But we were talking about some of that work that we were doing on an HPDC call, and Catherine reached out to us afterwards to tell us some more about the program. And I was sort of loosely aware that that this existed out there, but I didn't really know much about it. And knowing the quality of work that Parsons does, as well as seeing the syllabus for the program, we were really excited about exploring it further. So that session, we created a course of, I think there were probably about 25 people from HKS that joined. That was last fall, or fall 2019 was our first cohort. And since then, we've had, I think, 20 to 30 each session join from HKS. Every cohort has been really impressed with the quality of material that's covered, and they've really enjoyed the on-demand format for the course, so they're able to work it into their schedule as available. But everybody tells us that they want to put aside an hour or two each time to work on it, because it's just something that once you get into, like, you just want to stay and learn more. So that's something that we've heard back, but also to help support the course, we schedule 3 to 4 different discussion sessions over the term of the session with everybody who's in the course. And if they're available to join, then they join, and we talk about from how everything from how the course is going, what they are learning, and what's really kind of resonating and sticking with them. Talk about additional tools that we have at HKS or other resources. There have been times when people have really enjoyed certain speakers, and we provided other recordings of them to learn more about that session or subject, for example. And then also we talk about how they can approach this internally with the work that they're doing. So, we tend to work on very large scale projects, and really making the connection to how this work happens on those types of projects is important to them. And talk about any other kind of struggles that they're having, either they're with clients or with team members that they're working with, to make sure that they continue to support healthy materials on the projects that they're working on. So we are, I think we're about 1,350 employees internationally. So that's a good chunk of people, right? And so we support everybody taking the course, so it's open to anybody. That first session was sort of a word of mouth solicitation to figure out who we would be a good candidate to sign up. But since then, we announce it within the firm through emails, as well as, there's different huddle kind of discussions and updates that people learn about it. And then other groups, we were always getting out the word about this as an option. And so, we have interior designers and architects, of course, who are taking it, but it's not limited to just kind of those design professionals. There's sustainability staff, such as myself. We have nurses who are part of our healthcare planning team that have taken it. People from our practice technology, and of course, construction administrators, or people who do construction administration work, of course, who do it as well. It's really important that the whole team, that everybody throughout the whole process of the design work understands these issues and are able to communicate this to their clients and to the teams and to, our collaborators and consultants as well. So we support everybody to take it. And it's also not limited to maybe entry level staff. So we have everybody from entry level up through principals and within the firm who take it. In every session, we have sort of that diverse group. And the other thing is that we are an international firm. So we have had a lot of participations from some of our international offices, in particular, New Delhi and Singapore.
Great, that was really good. So next we have another short excerpt from when Sheridan spoke last month, and she's going to explain what the education means as a junior interior designer at HKS.
I joined HKS a year and a half ago, and I had previous internship experience in the industry, but I'm generally new. And so I immediately felt like I was entering a whole new world of dialogue and vocabulary and jargon that I wasn't quite familiar with. So I felt that there were a lot of gaps from my education, which was fantastic of design, that I still wanted to expand upon. I felt that I graduated and I was done learning, I was ready to do everything. And then I quickly realized I needed a little more education. And so I was eager to find as many different opportunities as possible to help fill in those gaps, and things like becoming a lead GA, obtaining that certification. Those were very useful in explaining the importance of different sustainability initiatives to me. But they weren't as clear of how I could be involved and input those methodologies into my practice if that project I was working on at that time, say, wasn't pursuing those different certifications. And that was one of the first things that happened to me, was I was put on a large lead project that I actually am still working on with Alison. And so I was beginning to select materials according to certain criteria that I wasn't familiar with. And I quickly wanted to become familiar not only with that baseline, but with what was possible from there. So taking the course as a younger individual, newer to the industry, I think it was incredibly useful for me to build a vocabulary, but it also helped me look ahead at the trajectory of my career and how I can not only enjoy my work, but find more purpose in it, to not meet the bare minimum of what is asked of me, but to exceed that. And I think about it frequently is when they talk in healthcare design of parents being overwhelmed at hospitals, and sometimes children are the one who are able to see the signs and help their parents get to the right places. I'm thrilled that so many people at different levels at HKS have taken the time to take the course, but I also felt as a junior designer, I had a bit more time. And so for principals around me or different individuals who haven't yet had that first opportunity to take the course, I'm now a voice they can turn to, and it's allowed me to help explain it and fill in some of those gaps for them, and as well as changing the status quo. My first couple months at the office before we moved home, I sat next to an architect who had 40 years of experience, and so he was a great repertoire of knowledge of how things get done. But I was able to start poking in some thoughts of here and then things are changing, and we really want to make sure we're on the right side of this, because material health is happening, so we can be at the forefront of it or we can be dragged along later. And I really wanted to be at the forefront of it. So it's really changed my work in a few ways. And I think it's really just getting the ball rolling of what I would like for it to do, of the complete transformation of everything that's possible. But in my main interactions with sales representatives of different companies, that's a primary one. As even a junior designer, that I'm able to affect great change. Just yesterday in a presentation, we were asked if we had any questions, and I was able to start establishing the importance of material health to the sales representative, who mentioned that they would take that request back to the rest of their company. And so it really gives me a strength and encouragement that I have power as a designer to help shape the future of the market and the industry as a whole. Inquiring about material health really should be just like we would inquire about costs or lead times or anything. And it's not difficult to do when we're already demanding so much of our wonderful reps, but you need to know it before you can do it. So it's helped me in that way primarily. Additionally, with my coworkers, I've been given, like I said, that new knowledge and vocabulary to be of assistance to them. If they are very curious about it, but not sure where to get started, I'm an easy bridge into the topic so that they can see the importance of it, and then I can get them started on the resources available to them, because there are so many, but it can seem overwhelming if you haven't had the exposure thus far. Additionally, there are a lot of myths out there and half-truths. And so you kind of need a few different people here and there keeping their ear out to the wind to say, wait, there's more to this than what you've heard, or to get someone started on the right questions to ask. And then lastly, with clients, being in commercial interiors, I get to see and am privy to a lot of the business of my clients and what their bottom line is. And so I've been able to start working this into my relationships with them and helping them understand we can affect their bottom line and help them understand that this material health and integrating this into our design process can support the work they do, which is incredibly important when, especially this year, we've learned the value of health, and that health is wealth. And so if we can manage to affect that, I think it's important on every project scale across industries. But when we think of the equity that was mentioned earlier, when I think about occupants who come into the offices that I design, they may not have a healthy or suitable environment with well-procured materials in the rest of their day. And in a day and age when we did spend most of our time at an office, I wanted to ensure that I could be supporting an environment for them that at least a portion of their time was in a protected space where their priorities were put first. And hopefully that will expand to all aspects of their day. But that is one indoor environment I know that they would likely spend a lot of time in, hands-on, that I could increase the value of for them. Entering the industry, the appeal of design really hinged on, for me, beauty. So many beautiful designs and the opportunity to really make something. But for me, what's changed about that is the importance of performance. You don't want a surface or shallow design. You want something that's truly there, and not a glass house that if you throw rocks at it, it's not smoke and mirrors behind. I think quality and quantity there, when you start to look at it, that performance is just so important in creating a lasting and impactful design and designing for true impact and transformation. So to me, material health is a key part of that performance metric. And so that was the main thing for me. It really changed the way I'm looking at design and how I want to change the way I bring everyone with me to the table to discuss design, to make sure that we can keep that at the forefront. What it's done is given me a framework for discussing all kinds of issues, actually, with everyone on a project team. I think that we can feel very comfortable with our designers and maybe not know how to get our designs across when we're talking to superintendents or things. And the course, I really appreciated, taught me the skill of getting everyone on the same page and inspired towards the same common goal. And in that, leadership skills and communication skills, which are crucial to any design. But I think that in any sector, if you're a designer or an architect, you have to get the things built somehow. And there's a very physical nature to that. And material health inevitably is a key component, especially in interiors. I think there's a misconception that it's all about the building materials and the core and shell. But we know that's not the case. We know that the interior materials are just as important. And so that would be the case in any environment. I've been given a lot of extra time into my life working from home. So that's a gift that I was able to do it. But I think as much as we are all busy individuals, the time it's given me back into my practice too, understanding and having the resources available, you will end up working with healthy materials. And if you learn it now, you're ready to go for the rest of your career versus being faced with a project or client who starts asking you to do these things and spinning your wheels in the mud. So you will spend the time one way or another. I would encourage everyone to look at how they could spend it now and invest in it in a protected time when you're deciding to do it on your own. I think being self-paced, if you decide to do it Sunday morning first thing, you get a lot more out of it than being forced into any other schedule. Maybe that's the last 3 Sundays before the end of the course, but you'll still get them done. I think that it being on your own schedule will make you appreciate it more. And I would just look at it as something that needs to happen. And so appreciate that you get to make it happen on your own time.
That's great. I just want to thank, in their absence, Alison and Sheridan again for those great insights into our courses. So now we're going to speak to Shefali Sanjeevi. She's associate at Datner Architects, who's been working in the realms of affordable housing in New York City for the past 15 years. Welcome, Shefali.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, guys. This is, I'm really glad to be able to provide any insight and really excited to have taken the course and be part of this conversation today.
Great. Well, thank you. So it'll be really great to hear your insights about applying what you've learned at the course within affordable housing. So as an architect in that area, what did you find was the most helpful about the Health Materials and Sustainable Building program?
So I guess I think I would be remiss if I didn't give a little background on Datner. So Datner is, a firm based in New York City that works primarily in the civic realm, where we have about 100 staff members, and our work is separated into 3 studios. We have the housing studio, which I'm part of, and my work is primarily or entirely in affordable housing, which is my passion and why I decided to become an architect. We have a studio that focuses primarily on transportation and infrastructure, and then a 3rd studio that does education, healthcare, and cultural work. And Datner has often been at the forefront of sustainability. 2 of our employees are actually in course 4, John Wolfling, who's a partner at our firm, and Steve Frankel, who is an associate principal at our firm. So from that point of view, it was really interesting to take this course and then sort of see people that I work with, that are my colleagues, talk about why this stuff is important. So and specifically for affordable housing, I think the reason I personally found this course really helpful is that as part of the Sustainable Practice Group's effort, we are trying to implement a sustainable spec standard in our office that can be applicable not only to the housing studio, but also to the work that we do throughout. And this really helped us understand what to look for when looking at materials and looking at submittals and specifying materials in our projects. And it also gave us this toolkit that we could then use when trying to convince clients or even partners in our firm who might be a little hesitant to switch to something that we've not really used in the housing market before. It gave us the language that we needed and the things to look out for. And it really just helped us become more knowledgeable when discussing the importance of healthy materials in our projects.
Right. And on the back of that then, Shefali, what are the greatest or the biggest obstacles that affordable housing providers face?
So I think to the surprise of no one, often affordable housing decisions are budget driven, right? I mean, it's like, we're trying to do the right thing and we have this very limited pot of money. And so when you look at it from that point of view, often clients or property management groups, they don't want to be the guinea pigs. They want to use things that they've used before, that they know works, they know how to maintain it, they know how to replace it, they understand end of life and life cycle analysis. So that's really been a big struggle. And I think that there's this unfair reputation that healthier materials are more expensive, either in the short term or in the long term. And people just look at it from like price, but don't necessarily understand that there is this life cycle cost associated with materials that are going into buildings. And, sure, maybe this is a little bit more expensive at the front end, but then when you look at it 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, you're more than recouping that cost when you start factoring other things into place, like maintenance costs or, the residential version of sick building syndrome and things like that. So I think that that's really been a struggle to implementing these sort of materials in affordable housing projects. And then I think like sometimes you do have mission driven clients that are interested in making sure that the building is as healthy as they possibly can because they want to make sure that their residents are safe and feel comfortable and healthy in their spaces. And they have a lot of questions. And it's really helpful to take this course and have this knowledge sort of at your fingertips or know where to turn to be able to answer that question, because it makes us look knowledgeable, which we are, right? And it really cements our role as a resource for them so that they feel like we're leading them intelligently and with their concerns in mind into the future. And I think that that's really a big part of it, is that if we can find a way to mitigate some of the concerns or questions that are around trying something new. I mean, we have questions around trying something new. So of course, our clients who are owning and operating these buildings for the entire life cycle of the building have questions and concerns about trying something new. So like it's upon us to be those stewards to bring something forward, and taking this course really helps, get you to that point and figure out where to look to get the answers to these questions and really usher people along with you.
Great. Was there any, real gem that kind of stood out in that regard? Like if there was one sort of major or a couple of small sort of takeaways that were really useful from the course?
Sure. I mean, I think definitely it really brought to my mind the value of research and making sure that you're looking at reliable sources when you're looking at information, and just like knowing that you can't just look in one place to get the answer for something, right? I mean, in an ideal world, we would have one place. We would have the Healthy Materials Lab to tell us all of our answers to all of our questions. But in order to get there, we all have to be part of that like collective research and like weeding out of misinformation. And I think that really was something that really hit home to me. And in listening to everybody else talk about taking the course, I took this course after we all shifted to working and learning from home. And there was this one slide in one of the courses that sort of talked about how much time you spend indoors versus how much time you spend outdoors. And it really, like, looking at that slide and thinking about how much time we spent in an ideal timeline, not considering like this quarantine timeline where there's nowhere to go and you've spent all this time in your apartment, really sort of made you realize how important it is to pay attention to the materials that you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, that's great. Certainly that was brought home to us all in this past year. With your work too, there's all of your projects have a sort of a sustainability focus, and can you talk maybe about the challenges of navigating this world of green products, healthier products, sustainability?
Yeah, I think and this kind of relates to what I was saying earlier about, the need for research and having trusted sources. But there's always been this concern with greenwashing, right? Like when LEED became really popular, I want to say like, okay, when LEED, I won't say how many years ago, but when LEED became really popular, everyone was like, oh, I want to get LEED certified. And then all of a sudden we had to concern ourselves with greenwashing. And I think that as more and more people pay attention to sustainability and specifically healthier materials, it's even more of a danger. And then all of a sudden people are talking about, oh, you need this special coating or this special finish to make sure that it's like completely healthy and antimicrobial and all these things that if you don't know the way that that information is presented to you, you're like, oh yeah, no, I do want to do the right thing. I do want to make sure that I have all these coatings so people can't get sick, especially now with COVID and making sure that like all this renewed interest in high touch surfaces and all of these things, like not knowing that people are just like selling you snake oil is a real issue. And I think this whole idea of like labels and making sure that you're paying it, what do these labels really mean? Who's certifying these labels? And I think all of that's been really, really important. And it just goes to show that you can really be led down the wrong path if you don't have trusted sources to get this material. And I think that that's really been a big problem because the reality is that we're architects, we're not scientists. Like we don't really, we rely on other people to distill information and tell us things. And we want to make sure that we have a good pool of information where we can get that, a good pool of resources rather, where we can get that information from so that we are doing the right thing. I don't know. That's sort of been the thing that was really eye-opening to me, is this idea of like, how are things labeled and who's providing the certification for these materials.
Great, thank you. So in terms of that, doing the right thing, which you are, and then you're thinking in terms of sustainability, and you want to have these really nice airtight buildings and they're energy efficient. How do you then respond to the health part of that through the materials?
I think that in the last few years, sustainability has really been tied to energy performance. And especially in affordable housing, because the easiest way to argue for things that cut down on your energy performance is that there's a direct impact to your bottom line when you look at operations and management of a property, right? And so as a result of that, I think people have sort of lost sight that sustainability is more than just energy. It also includes the health and wellness of the people who are extracting, manufacturing, and using your spaces, extracting, manufacturing the materials and living or working or using the spaces that you're designing and building. And I think that, codes are changing so that we're getting closer and closer to code mandated passive house or net zero. So there is this renewed interest in building tightness and making sure there's no leakage or all the leakage is controlled. But with that, there has to be this renewed interest and like vigor in making sure that you're specifying materials that don't off-gas or don't make people sick as they start to off-gas and degrade in your spaces. And I think that especially for affordable housing, where oftentimes the people that live in affordable housing are disproportionately low-income Black and Brown communities that have for so long been impacted by these decisions that they have no say in. And like, what is our role in making sure that we can, in whatever way we can, start to address that in a way that is like, that tries to make things more fair and healthy. And like, it's like, I don't know. I just think that with, the murder of George Floyd and this renewed interest in climate, in justice, racial justice, there has to be a similar interest in climate justice. And that really has to be very cohesive about looking at the materials we put in our building, how they're, the whole life cycle from extraction to manufacturing to installation, life cycle, and end of life. Like what are we doing with these materials? It's been so easy to just sort of, like I think about plastic, right? It's been so easy to just be like, oh yeah, I'll just get a plastic water bottle, or, everything is covered in plastic now. And here we are 40, 50 years later, and there's so much plastic and there's nothing to do with it. And it's, I don't know. I think that it's, you can't be an affordable housing architect without thinking about the materials that are going into your projects. Because if you aren't, and you aren't asking your client to, who is? Who is making sure that you're doing, that the people who are living in your projects are not automatically given the short end of the stick?
That's so great. I have a question for you, Shivali. I was so interested. I wanted to ask you a little bit about community engagement and residents. And often when we talk about the work that we do, we talk about all the potentially great work that we can do as architects, designers, contractors to create this, beautiful, potentially beautiful new housing project. That's the other kind of half of the conversation. And we think a lot about those future residents as, really the equivalent of clients in a typical kind of relationship. And so, thinking about how their voices and their aspirations and their understanding of the, the places that are being designed for them, how those voices are somehow incorporated into the process of design, building, construction, and eventually kind of maintenance and operations afterwards. And I wondered how much work Datner had done in that area of, including those voices.
Well, I think that we've been trying. It's an ongoing process, right? We can always be better. I think that, we are also discussing internally, like, how can we be better about engaging with the end user and not just relying on the client? Because the reality is oftentimes, in New York City, at least, affordable housing has a nonprofit community partner that is there, and they're expected to be the voice of the community, of the people who end up moving into the project. But not all projects have that. Like I have a project where the client is a for-profit developer. They're building in an all affordable passive house project, but they wanted to put carpet everywhere, and we were like, why? Why do you want to put carpet everywhere? And there is this, there's only so much we can do, right? I guess that's not really an appropriate statement. It's a balance, because you don't want to make decisions for people without knowing really what they want. But you can start thinking about, what is it that we can do that makes this building so user-friendly that they don't realize that these changes have been made, so that, with their health in mind. Like, and just to use my previous example, like, we spent a long time convincing them that carpet was a bad idea, that they should go with like bio-based resilient flooring. And so I think that there's work to be done. We, as architects, we often feel like our hands are tied because we don't have that direct relationship with the end user. I did work on a project once where it was tenant in place renovation. And there we were fortunate enough to really talk to the tenants and the residents and be like, hey, this is going to be, we're looking at redesigning your home. What would you like? What are some of the things that you want to see? And even then, the thought process was more about layout, not really like, there's less of this awareness that you should pay attention to the materials that are installed in your space. I don't know if I really answered your question. I don't know. It's a work in progress, I guess, for lack of a better.
No, it's great. It's great. And Datner does such a great job, working in the affordable housing space. And so your insights are incredibly valuable here. Really appreciate, your feedback in this area.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm just going to put out another call for any other questions from any of the participants, if you just want to pop them into the Q&A box. We do have one here from Anthony, which is about the course specifically. So Alison, you and I can come together on this. Is the course agnostic or widely applicable to the variety of certification programs? And if one of the programs, how is Parsons supporting this material specification endeavor?
So you're talking, Anthony, there about, Living Building Challenge or USGBC LEED kind of certifications. Is that what you're talking about? Do we think?
That's how I'm understanding it. So,
and we're agnostic. I mean, what we're trying to do, what we advocate for is harmonization of certifications, that it's extremely difficult as an architect or a designer actually to navigate between some of these certification programs. So if we could just have, one certification program that we all agreed worked really well and actually incorporated material health in a kind of robust way, I think, that would be perfect. But and is the second part of the question is, are any of the certification programs supporting this educational programming? Is that how you read that?
Well, the question was if we were aligned with one of the programs, how is Parsons supporting this material specification endeavor? But we're not aligned with any of them specifically, if I'm understanding his question correctly. And a lot of what we talk about, and maybe Shefali, you can also add to this, is to kind of have a broad understanding of the implications and look at the different certification programs out there, see what ones offer the best criteria that you can apply to a project at a given time, depending on your own capabilities or capacity within the firm.
Yeah, I would just say that one of the reasons I really wanted to take the course was because it was not aligned with a specific certification or course. I think in one of the clips that you showed as part of your preview, someone said that, it's not just about a plaque. And I think that when you look at it under the purview of a specific certification, all you really care about is making sure you hit that benchmark that either your client wants or you want, and it sort of ends up being a little bit about like bragging rights, and you lose sight of, or I guess you run the danger of it becoming about bragging rights, and you lose sight of what's really important. So having something that is agnostic and really talks about materials specifically as this independent thing, I think gives you a better framework to be able to go and look at any certification and be able to provide an intelligent path forward as it relates to materials.
Great, thank you. We have another participant who asked how undergraduate students at Parsons can enroll in certificate courses.
I'm just replying to that.
Oh, you are, great.
Yeah, but you can say it verbally as well.
Yeah, so in that case, then you just reach out to your advisor, who will then direct you. They're available, but it's within the school. So you just reach out to your own advisor, who will be able to direct you to Dunsauer or Ruth, who coordinates the offering within the school.
So I don't see anything else there, Catherine, right?
No. Ava, do you have any questions from any of the other platforms?
No, I don't.
Well, thank you. Well, we're just coming up to 10 before 1. Are there, I see Natalia has come in here. Are there any lead credits for it? No, currently we just have AIA, IDCC, and we're in the process of getting all CUs for GBCI. So it's just for the first program, Materials in Human Health, at the moment.
I just, sorry, from a practitioner point of view, I did self-report for taking the course to GBCI, not the full 18 hours. I cut it down a little because not everything was really, I didn't think was completely applicable. And so far I have not gotten audited, if that's helpful for anyone.
Very important piece of information.
Yeah,
that's great.
If I could just say one more thing, I think that your speakers from HKS talked about this a little, but as someone who is maybe not starting out, but also hasn't been doing this for 40 years, I found this course incredibly helpful. I mean, there were things when I was like, yeah, I kind of know this already, but it was nice to have that reminder. And I think that it really invigorated my passion for this topic. That sometimes when you've been working for 15 years, you start losing sight of, because it's just like, okay, what's my next deadline? What's the next thing that I have to do? So it was really nice to remember that architecture or working is more than just what you do day to day. And we did have a partner in our firm who took this course. And he also felt similarly that, sure, there were things that he already knew, but it was nice to get the reminder, and it was nice to really start thinking about things more critically and not assume that everyone took the same things for granted, that we know as architects that work in sustainability and in affordable housing. So I would definitely advocate for this program, especially for professionals who are at any point in their career.
That's so great. Thank you very much for that. It's great to hear that, that these courses make an impact in people's working lives. So thanks for that, Shivali.
Great. Well, thank you, Shivali, for joining us again today. And I think if anybody has any more questions, they can reach out to us at healthmaterialslab@newschool.edu or cmurphy@newschool.edu. Registration is currently open. The spring session starts on January 19th, so next week. Registration will be open until February the 2nd, so there's still time to enroll. It's completely self-paced, so you can take it at whatever suits your schedule best. And there are no assessments per se, but as you go through the program, you'll answer a series of quizzes that will kind of unlock the next section for you. And it will be open right through until May 10th. At May 10th, the course has to be completed, but you will have access to all of the course content for an additional 60 days after that. And when I say all of the course content, I mean the content that you have already viewed. So it's not an opportunity to finish the program, but it is an opportunity to recap anything that you've already viewed. So at that point, you can make downloads and go over the videos again. The videos themselves are not downloadable, but we have a whole plethora of resources and takeaways that you can download at that point. So you don't have to do everything at the same time. Okay, so we hope that some of you who've been joining us today will join us in the course, and keep in touch and check out our website and our Instagram.
Yeah, thanks for you all for attending today. Thanks to Shivali for helping us too. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a great day.